So now moving on to Community Foundation Wales' story, which is a slightly different story in that they were already using Salesforce, but they were actually sharing an org with a network of community foundations. And what that meant was they didn't have the flexibility necessarily to do what they wanted to do locally and to adapt it to their processes. So by shifting onto their own independent version of Salesforce, it meant that the objective was to increase their self-sufficiency and flexibility, and obviously to migrate across from the existing Salesforce into their own, but very much simplifying things. So getting out of any complexities that were in the previous solution and really drilling down to benefiting from standard functionality. So that meant using non-profit success pack features for their donation and kind of development perspective. They were able to use form assembly now for online forms of all different kinds, which gives them that flexibility to quickly launch COVID-19 grant application ahead of the main go live. And so that was, again, a phased approach. So if you look at the timeline here, we had, again, the discovery sessions took place in March, but unfortunately they were in lockdown. It was just right at the beginning of lockdown, actually. So we had to shift all of that online, which brings its own challenges. You don't get the opportunity to build that kind of face-to-face chemistry, but it's just important to cut it into manageable chunks and just take it slightly differently. And then that first kind of initial emergency grant go live was April, and the main go live was August. So it was a slightly different implementation approach. It was more traditional waterfall style. It wasn't an agile, but there was the chance for the team to kind of review and feedback on all of the configuration throughout the project. So let's bring in Ffion then with some questions. So Ffion, as we've already said, you were using Salesforce for some time, but actually what this new shiny version of Salesforce that was just for you made a big difference to your flexibility. So talk a bit about what difference that made. Ffion, are you on mute?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go. Yeah, so you're right in saying that we've used Salesforce for years, and it was kind of part of the org for a network of organisations, which meant we couldn't adapt it to kind of suit our needs here in Wales. And I think the old system was on Salesforce Classic, and you're right in saying that Lightning is very shiny. It's a lot more intuitive, so it works great. So kind of with the old system, we found that it just wasn't working for us in terms of it was very clunky, and that which meant that people were either finding workarounds or not avoiding to use the system at all, which obviously has a knock-on effect on the data within the system, the reports you can get from the system then, which, they're not accurate. So I guess for us, we decided this year to invest in our own org and kind of get something that works perfectly for us, but also we can change as the business changes. I think this year we've seen that we need to be adaptable more than any other year, really. So that kind of the Salesforce kind of can adapt with us, which is one of the reasons we really wanted to kind of use Salesforce. So the way we use Salesforce is twofold, as you mentioned. So we manage our relationship with donors on one side and also process the grant applications on the other. And Salesforce Lightning is great in that it's like building blocks, and that the phase approach we've taken is we've prioritized the essential bits first, and then we're going to add on the building blocks later. That helps in terms of implementation and getting the team on board, but also in terms of budget for us, obviously the budget was key in terms of we needed to stick within that and getting this up and running as quickly as possible. So I guess in terms of ability to kind of adapt, as we've been using your system for so long, it was hard initially to get our head and get out of the mindset that we needed to carry on working like we've always done. And the scoping exercise we did with you, Elaine, and Richard at Hyphen8 really helped us to see how the new system could help us streamline and simplify things. I'm all for some simplicity, and we could see that kind of some tasks were maybe being done twice by different team members, which just isn't a great use of time. So this process has given us the opportunity to adapt how we work and work a lot smarter, which inevitably increases capacity within the team as well, which is essential when you've got it, because for us, we've only got 10 within the whole team. The grants team is a team of 3. So it's making sure that we use our time as best as possible. So in terms of I can never say this word, automating, I was finding that the team was kind of bogged down with small and repetitive tasks often, so kind of which was affecting our capacity to take on new funds and programs. So the technology is great in kind of automating the stuff like tasks, reminders, confirmation emails, which kind of frees the team up to do things kind of only humans can do. So for us, it was finding the balance of making the most of what Salesforce has to offer in terms of automating things, but not losing that personal and friendly approach that our donors and our grantees get from emailing or phoning a team member. Because there's no doubt that kind of automating these tasks has increased our capacity as a team, which, has been key this year, because we've, managed to award more grants this year than we ever have done any other previous year. And we're only halfway through the year. So we're already seeing the benefits, and we've only gone live since August. So it's, we've seen the benefits really quickly.
Perfect. And you alluded earlier to things maybe not going to plan, Ffion, and what we don't want to do is paint a picture on this webinar that everything is absolutely smooth from beginning to end in every circumstance. It is not. So tell us a bit about the actual project implementation process, and I think mainly managing time and really the expectations around how you can balance getting really involved in a technology project whilst doing your day jobs.
Yeah, it definitely did not go to plan, and we're a relatively small team at the foundation. And when we decided to implement a new system back in January, which feels like forever ago, the plan for this year looked very different to what it's turned out to be. So the original plan was to close all our grant programs to create that capacity internally to implement this project. But then coronavirus pandemic happened, and the grants team ended up being busier than ever awarding emergency funding in Wales. So I've come to the conclusion that there is never a perfect time to do this kind of work, and I'm pleased to say we have managed to complete the project, even if it was a few weeks delayed. So I would say the key things that helped us to manage time and kind of project delivery was continuous communication with the team at Hyphen8, but also internally for us. So we had Claire as our project manager at Hyphen8, and I found our weekly catch-up meetings on a Monday very helpful in terms of prioritising what needed to be done that week and making sure me and the team had time allocated in our diaries to do it, just so that we then weren't holding kind of you guys up in the building phase. We also use Microsoft Teams as a tool to keep in contact kind of throughout, keep track of what elements of the system we'd tested or needed further testing. So we had spreadsheets, we had the planner, just to kind of track tasks. So that kind of made sure that, we all knew what each other was working on. In terms of testing the system, we did decide to include the whole team in the user testing phase of the system. So it's kind of give people the opportunity to see what it was like in terms of before it launched, but also get excited about what was coming. But also having so many people testing did mean the user testing phase stage took longer than we anticipated. But I still feel it was worthwhile because it kind of everyone got involved, but also everybody picked on different things and found maybe things that wasn't quite working as they would have liked. So I think we've ended up with a much better system at the end.
Yeah, I think there was a decision to kind of delay, because it's kind of like, do we feel like we've done enough testing? No, because it would have been more risky to go live with something that wasn't right. So just that slight delay made all the difference in the end.
Yeah, definitely.
And what's interesting is just hearing so far from 2 organisations is how different the approaches were. And I think it's really important, some of the things you said about communication and how often you keep in touch, and the tools that you use should really be chosen depending on your internal capacity, your culture, the way that you like to work. So we always like to do that differently and establish that at the beginning of a project rather than enforce one way of working. So Thanks, Ffion. We'll speak to you later.